Hello and welcome to this amazing webinar on CISSP Success, Think Like a Manager, Mastering the CISSP Mindset, part number 2. If you are new to me, my name is Manoj Sharma, and as you can see on the screen, I am one of the top cybersecurity voice and also information security voice. At the same time, I have been teaching CISSP for the last 8 years, and over a period of time, I have learned a lot teaching people what helps in the CISSP exam and what does not. The part number 1 of this particular webinar was done the last week. So if you want to get more grasp of it, I would recommend go and watch part number 1. In this one, we are going to talk further a little bit on the advanced level. And this webinar can be little lengthy today because we are diving in with examples so that you can have the right mindset when you are going for the exam. This is what the critical analysis we did last time. What makes the CISSP questions so challenging? The first one we have discussed last time was TMI challenge, which is called as too much information. That means it's a lengthy question. They might be taking you from one domain to another domain, and finally the last line might be asking for a question, and that is where you are pissed off by the length of the question. Similarly, 4x challenge, this thing as well we covered the last time, in which the option also are lengthy. Because all the options are lengthy, it becomes 4-time challenge, it becomes 4x challenge. Then we have discussed about the confusion challenge. This is where you get confused out of the two options. Even if you are going with elimination method, you may be able to quickly weed out two options, but the other two still create that confusion and you land up on the wrong side. So that is also one of the challenging aspect of a CISSP question. The next aspect, and I think the most important here, is called as the English challenge. The questions are going to have new terms, very relatable terms, but they will not be exactly giving you certain terms. So you need to be clear on that. How do we answer those kind of questions as well? So until this point, TMI problem to the English challenge I have covered in my webinar number 1. There's no point repeating it. I highly recommend you go and watch the previous webinar. Now in this one, let's talk about the last one here, which is called as keyword challenge. So in this entire webinar, first we are going to talk about these keywords. These are called as qualifier keywords. So we'll talk about this, and thereafter we will also dive into understanding what is that typical mindset. People keep saying think like a manager, but nobody tells how to think like a manager. We are going to practice today with certain example for each and every rule. There is a set of 10 rules which I follow, and if you follow, I can give you guarantee you are going to score at least 10% more in your CISSP exam. So let's go and dive into the keyword challenge. Let's go and hit the first keyword, that is primary. We have spoken about this a little bit in the previous webinar, but let's cover it a little bit more here, right? Primary means the fundamental. You have to think like a layman. You have to think like a layman. Keep asking the question why, right? Why? And finally the place where you land up is going to be your option, right? So CISSP exam is all based on concepts. You should be super clear on the concept, and if there are 4 options, you should be able to relate them and arrange them into a certain order. So when they say order, that means the primary comes at the bottom. If the primary is not there, the other options will not be met, right? Let's see this with an example. This is the question. You are implementing a public key infrastructure. The primary purpose of using certificate in PKI is to what? So if you see this question carefully, we use PKI for a lot of stuff. We also use digital certificates. We have the public key and all, and that will help you to encrypt the traffic, enhance the known repudiation, because digital signature can also be used in there. There are a lot of things which we can do, but the primary fundamental purpose of a PKI is what? Is to establish the trust, right? And that is why option D is the correct option in this case. You can see that, right? Option D. So that is the kind of qualifier thing which we have to go and apply the word primary into. I hope that gives you some kind of clarity. Let's go to the another example here, right? What is the primary difference between security policies and security procedures? Right? Very straightforward question, but the word primary is the main keyword here, and basis that you have to answer the question, right or wrong. Whatever, if you don't understand primary better, then this question you may land up with the wrong option. If you see all the options carefully, the option D, policies are generic in nature and procedures contain operational detail. So that is the right answer thinking, because it is the fundamental thing, right? It's very, very primary stuff, which is always there. That is what for policies are made. That defines the structure of a policy. That defines the structure of a procedure as well. So that is why D is the right option. So I hope you got a good glimpse of the keyword primary here, right? Great. So let's talk about the keyword most, right? This is often very much used in the CISSP exam, and here is one example question also for you. As and when you see the word most in your questions, right, it means you have to suggest the out of the available options, you have to pick and apply each option there, and what is the most applicable one in a given scenario. That is what you have to select. That is basically the strongest option all the time, and consider the effectiveness and the strength of the option. Always you have to see it from a strength operation, how effective it is going to be. So that is the word most, which you should always be focused. For example, this question, right? You are implementing a multi-factor authentication solution for remote access to the corporate network. Which of the following factors would be the most important to consider when selecting a second authentication factor? So very, very basic fundamental question, right? And you can see they talk about cost, they talk about user convenience, they talk about strength of the authentication method, and they talk about the ease of integration with existing system. Obviously guys, everything applies. When you are going to select a multi-factor authentication system, everything will apply. All options are very much valid. But what is the most valid? That is the question, right? That is what the qualifier is. So in this option, the first and foremost thing, the most important thing is strength of the authentication method. If the authentication method itself is not strong, then the entire thing fails, right? It can be cost effective, it can be very convenient for the user as well, it can be very ease of integration with other resources also, but if your multi-factor system itself is not strong enough, then everything fails. And that is why C is the right option in this question. So this is the kind of approach you have to follow when you are getting question based on most. Let's talk about the keyword best. So one caution I want to give it to you: whatever the options you get are always not the best. You may hardly get a best option, right? What as per the books and all, whatever you have read, it may not be exactly the same thing there as part of the options. So a little bit of caution here. The best means whatever the available options are there, right, in the question, out of those, which one is the best? It may not be the perfect best, but you have to, out of the available things which you have, the resources you have, which one is the best option? For example, right, the best means optimal or ideal solution, right? But the most recommended out of the provided option should be your answer in this particular case. For example, the question says, which of the following is the best practice to mitigate the risk of unauthorized access to sensitive data in a corporate network? Right? So best practice to mitigate the risk of unauthorized access. You can see implementing biometric authentication makes sense. Conducting regular security awareness training session also makes sense. Deploying a firewall with the default deny policy is also a good practice you have to follow. But you have to find the best. So when it comes to data, please remember one thing: when it comes to barely to the data, exactly on the data, right? I think there is no better control than encryption. It is the control which applies directly to the data, and when entire defense in depth also get broken, it is the encryption which can prevent the data loss. right? Because even if the attacker breaches all your controls, reaches to the data also, the value for that particular data becomes 0 value for the attacker if it is already encrypted. So that is why it is the best control you can always implement. Obviously you need to have others as well, but from this question perspective, right, that is where I wanted to explain you what is the meaning of best. So that is what, if in a question, like let's say in the same question, if I tell you you don't find an option as encryption, then what should be your next best, isn't it? So your next best in that case is going to be access controls. So that is something like that kind of mindset you have to apply and understand this more in depth. What is what, which control is the most important, then what is the next one, then what is the next one. So if you don't even get the best option there, you can settle with the second best as well, right? So that is the approach here when you go for the best option. Let's also talk about first, because first also is very much used in most of the question. You may also get some keyword like first, and in that case first means initial and the most crucial, because if you don't take the first step right, maybe the next process or steps are not working as recommended. So that's always a challenge, right? So in those kind of questions, you have to focus on the initial step in the process. It might be they are talking about, let's say, an incident response process. What is the first step? What is the first step in the entire incident response process, right? That is where you detect, right? So that it is highly recommended from my side. Please go ahead and all different process, let's say risk assessment, incident management, investigations, then whatever different processes are there, as and when you talk about vulnerability management, pen testing, all these kind of stuff, please go and revise and list down all the steps which are there, and you should know where security is there in each and every option, and you should know what is the first and what is next. You should also know the logical flow of these steps, and that will help you clear this kind of questions in the exam. Let's talk about this question, right? They say, when deploying security controls to protect web server, which control should be implemented first to mitigate the common threats in the environment, right? And yet there are 4 options out there, right? Number 1 says IPS, web application firewall, strong password policies, and regular security patch management. So it is very difficult for you to understand, okay, which one I apply first. You have to put your logical mindset at this time and try to see which one you are going to do from an organizational perspective first, and then later on all others can come. So an IDS, IPS or a WAP you can implement later on also, but the first thing is you need to have policies, and those policies should talk about strong passwords. If you're not using strong passwords, then obviously whatever security controls you have, those passwords are broken and anybody can have access to it. So very, very fundamental first step. And that is how we go and resolve this option, and we go to the option number C. That's the answer, right? So I hope these kind of example give you a good glance of how the things has to be resolved. The next thing which you see in the CISSP exam is the word least, right? Let's talk about this a little bit. So as you see on your screen, right, least means minimal requirement or the weakest option. Either it is the minimal requirement, you hardly care about it, or even if you measure it, you still keep it, you don't work on it, or it might be the weakest part in the entire chain. So that kind of questions or options you have to select when they talk about the word least. So you have to identify the least effective approach, or sometimes also you have to think about it, right? The least, let's say you have 4 options and you are searching for the least. That least might not be completely gone case. That least might not be completely ineffective. That will still be very much valid. But as compared to the other option, that is the least. Let's see this from this example. Okay. Which of the following is the least effective method of protecting against SQL injection attack? Now these kind of questions are not only testing you on do you know the remediations for SQL injections, Definitely they are testing you on that, and they are also testing you, are you able to compare which one is the most strong one and which one is the least effective one. So these kind of questions will also you can face in the exam. So if you go and see this question, right, from a solution perspective, right, it says option number A, input validation and sanitization of user supplied data, and that is very much valid, because a SQL injection itself, it happens because your application is not able to differentiate between the data and the command. When a user gives some kind of data, your system start treating this as a command, and then it execute it. Whatever the script is there at part of the data, it execute it. So that is where input validation is very much required. So we cannot go and say that the input validation is least required, not at all. So we eliminate option A. We go to option number B, where we say implementing parameterized queries in database interactions, right? Parameterized queries are very, very important, right? Because that is where you actually counter all these different type of parameters or the input who is giving, and then the entire input you treat it as data. So that is a very much required control. When you talk about option number C, it talks about user stored procedures to handle database transactions. That is also very much required, because stored procedures are nothing but the functions which are there, and they will just whatever data you are giving to them, dynamically they will take it, and based on the predefined script and all, they are going to execute it. Simple as that. So that is also a very, very recommended control for SQL injection. What you see as part of the option number D, it says implementing strong encryption for database connections. So in a SQL injection, obviously database is the target. Application is just a medium to reach to the database, but the target is actually the database. But will the encryption between the application and the database will help prevent SQL injection? Not at all. Because for an attacker, the end facing system is the application itself. If the application itself has vulnerability, that is the problem statement. The problem statement doesn't lie with the data passing from the application to the database. So definitely that is the reason why we should go and answer this as option number D. So I hope this gives you a structured way how to think and answer these kind of questions. These are qualifier questions, and they are, turning point of any question. You should be very careful. Let's also talk about one more keyword, which is called as not. Not means negative thing, right? And most often when we read a particular question, sometimes we ignore this keyword, and that leads to everything in a different direction altogether, because you land up saying something which you know and you are very confident upon, but you ignored the word not, and the entire question goes wrong, right? Let's see this with an example, right? Note says, note is basically an right, it indicates an exception or a incorrect assumption that is not related either, or that is not applicable either. Let us see this with this particular question, right? It says, which of the following is not a core function of a security information and event management system? Log aggregation and analysis, option A, very much required. It is the fundamental part. If you are not collecting the log itself, you are not aggregating the log itself, you cannot set up your SIM solution. So A cannot be the option here, right? It says not a core function. It is definitely a core function. Security incident and event correlation, 100% it is required. Otherwise you will not be able to identify the security incident. The detection itself will not happen. So that is where B also does not apply. Then vulnerability scanning and management. Yes, in certain cases we do that, because you are able to see certain kind of pattern, and that leads to discovery of a particular vulnerability and all. So very much this is also a core function. But when you see on the option number D, automatic security patch deployment. Do we ever use our SIM solution for patch deployment? Not at all. You may have in your company called as SCCM as a solution. You may have GEMF as a solution. You might be using Trivoli as a solution. Those are the kind of solution which we require to push the updates on the system, not your SIM solution. That is not the purpose of your SIM solution. And that is why you go and select the option number D as your. So be very careful. It's very important to understand this question well, and never ever ignore the word note. Very important, right? And one additional tip I would like to give it to you. If in the exam you get the word note followed with a negative word again, let's say, which out of the following is not an unauthorized attempt or unauthorized access. So this means the negative and negative make it positive. So it becomes a very simple statement saying which of the following is is a valid attempt, right? So always be mindful of that, because this can tangle you up during the exam and it can waste your time there, right? So I hope these are some of the trickiness which you need to be familiar with when you go to the CISSP exam. It's very much required. We also need the right mindset to pass the CISSP exam, right? It is very much important, because what happens is, let's say you are coming from a technical background and you see a question which is talking about the technical stuff, and your intent will be to go into it. I never recommend you, as a CISSP aspirant, you should be getting into the problem and start resolving the problem. They are often not testing you for that. They might be testing you what as a CISO you are going to do, what as a security guy who already knows the different processes around and they respect the company ethics and all. There might be something different they might be asking you, and that is why I see most of the people do this particular mistake. So in this particular section, I am going to talk about 10 golden rules for you, which will actually make you to at least score 10% more in your CISSP exam, and this will be the perfect mindset for your CISSP. So let's go and explore, right? But before we explore, I also want to give you a very good gift in case you are just starting with your CISSP preparation. We are going to talk about all those golden rules, but before this, let's talk about the CISSP Success Toolkit. I have been training for CISSP for last 10 years. I have trained thousands of people, and over a period of time, I understood that the bootcamp approach for training is at all not effective. So that is why over a period of time, I have done a lot of work on this particular thing and have brought up with you a very perfect program for you that is called as the CISSP Success Toolkit. In this toolkit, what you get a 100 days access to my entire toolkit. And when I say toolkit, it means everything you need to pass your CISSP exam. There is a perfect 100 days program. You just have to follow the program. You don't need to worry about anything else. Everything is included in the plan, and you have to just follow my guidance out there. They are very well structured in the there are a lot of videos, very well structured and illustrated videos. You can see everything is week wise, day wise. You have to just complete the target of the day and done. After that, one of the major hurdle for people who are already working in corporate, that is very common. Reading is really boring, and with the corporate responsibilities and all, reading those heavyweight books becomes a pain. So that is why in this particular program, you don't need to do anything like that. This particular program comes with inbuilt book. I have my own book, Pass CISSP in 100 Days. That book is something you are going to get, and you have to read at least 3 times less than what you go and read those heavyweight books. And more importantly, these notes are available on the same day. You cover the video first, then you cover the notes first, then and there at the same place. So this will make sure that your concepts are clear and you only read what is required for you for the CISSP exam, right? Then in the same toolkit, you also have practice questions. 3,500 practice questions out there. You don't have to purchase any other exam engine or anything like that. This also comes with 950 concept questions. These courses, you can see me on Udemy, they are rated very high. If you go and search me on the first page of Udemy, just put CISSP, you will get all these courses. You don't have to purchase them independently. As part of the entire package, you are going to get all these 950 core questions and core concepts which are explained in very easy English. It's not just something as a verbal thing. It is my videos which are there, and I'm explaining you each and every concept. Then there is a perfect mock test, and you can see the reviews for this mock test. Many people have gone through those mock exams, and they cleared the CISSP exam very confidently. It is a set of 5 sets, and it has 750 questions. In this entire toolkit, you are also going to get access to that. More on that, this particular program is just not a online course access, right? It comes with my live classes, and you are going to get 60 hours of live classes directly from me. And one very important thing is, you don't have to go and read theory. I will leave theory to you, and I will make you to practice tough CISSP question in my weekend classes. So that is the core. That is the very important part. Many people think I'm just going through certain books and all, and I will pass CISSP. Not at all. For their realization, they realize when they fail the exam, they feel like just understanding CISSP is a different beast, and passing the CISSP exam is a different beast. And in my classes, I get you ready for that beast, so that when you go to the real CISSP exam, you don't even feel like I am doing something very different. Those kind of questions we are already practicing in our live classes. 4 hours of live classes, and everybody is on toes. You are being tested in the exam, and then I explain each and everything in a very minute way. That is where we talk about different mindset and other things. Whatever I am explaining you is a very tiny part of the entire big stuff. You are going to get entire thing when you come and join the. So just in case you are just planning to start your CISSP journey, you can consider CISSP Success Toolkit. A lot of people got certified. You can see last week also 3 people got certified just last week. This is a quick and easy comparison between the bootcamp training approach, which you get everywhere. They don't give you all this. They just give you some weekly live classes and share the recordings with you, or they may share some PDF kind of thing with you, right? That is all they do. But in the program, you can get 100 days plan, 1 year access to the entire structured course, live exam practice. Nobody else is doing that. No heavyweight books. You have to go with my stuff only, make you lightweight. You have to practice almost 5,000 questions in the entire 100 days course. And then entire thing is available on mobile phone as well. And you get CISSP dedicated mentor, more than 50 people who have been my students, and they are opted for being a mentor for you. All and everyone is waiting for you to get successful. So that is a little bit about CISSP Success Toolkit. In case you are preparing for it, I think that's the best thing for you to go. Value for money. Okay, now come back, and we are going to talk about how you should think in the CISSP exam. What should be your approach in the CISSP? Before I start this, one very important thing I must tell you is, do not get into the problem. It has been asked from you as an advisory role. They are asking you something from an advisory perspective. So you have to stand out, see the problem from a distance, and then decide which is the right option. Do not jump into the problem. You have to see the problem and be in an advisory role. That is the first thing I would advise you. And then when you have that mindset, the first rule we are going to talk about is called as the Inclusivity Rule. What does this rule says? Very simple. So if you get a management question in the exam, because I told you in the last webinar as well, there are 3 different type of questions you are going to get. One is a management question, which tests your intent, your behavior, your actionable, how you are going to deal with a certain scenario. The second kind of question is more technical in nature. They are straightway checking your validation of your concept. And the third thing is alien question, you can call it. They are called as some kind of questions which are not evaluated for the exam, but there is no way to identify if they are evaluation questions or what. So no meaning going there. So if you get a management question in the exam and you are struggling identifying, you are already eliminated 2 options, but finally you are landing up 2 options which are looking very close. So how do we deal with that? In those questions, in 90% of the cases, if you choose one of the option which includes the other, right? If you choose an option which includes the other one, if you do it, the other thing will automatically be done after that. If you see that kind of option, always go with the inclusive one. Little confused? Let me show you with an example. So let's read this question, right? In the context of information security management, which of the following principle is the most important? That is the question, right? It is asking least privilege principle, defense in depth principle, separation of duties, and need to know. Now, every principle is a base principle, and everything can confuse you in the exam, especially when you are a little bit tense and you have to complete the exam within 3 hours, right? So in that case, what you should do is find out the option which includes everything, and that is defense in depth. If you implement defense in depth, least privilege will be taken care of, separation of duties will be taken care of, and need to know also will be taken care of. So if you can see on the right hand side, there are 3 different options, but they can all be accomplished in one package as B. Go for it. 99% of the chance that is always the right option, right? I hope this gives you some kind of clarity, right? Rule number 2. This rule number 2 is fixing the root cause. If, let's say, they are saying as a CISO, you have seen that some security incidents are happening and you need to find a solution to this so that it doesn't happen in future, right? Always have a leadership mindset. Don't get more transactional and try to eliminate the problem as a single problem as the thing, right? Try to come out of that and think long term. How can I fix the root cause? If there is a process improvement required, should I do and should I go for a process improvement? Should I go and implement a security control? Like that. This kind of question is again a management question, and you will most often be stuck into 2 options. Then this is the one which you should follow. Always go with the option which is long-term solution, right? Believe me, it really works. It has worked for a lot of people and it's gonna work for you as well. So just understand the theme of the question and you will see, start applying it. When you are practicing the question, start applying this. This is really a fantastic thing. Okay, another example here, right? This example says, in a scenario where an organization is planning to improve the security posture, which of the following option represent the best solution? So you can see, conducting periodic vulnerability assessment, implementing a comprehensive security awareness program, purchasing and deploying the latest intrusion detection system, and all of these is required. All of this is required, right? But is everything is a long-term solution? May not be. If you see the option number D, developing and enforcing a robust security policy framework. So if you implement policy, obviously rest all thing you are going to implement as part of your risk management and security management. So why don't you go with the option where you are going to set the policy thing first, right? And then go for other one. So because every security posture of a company is different, it's not the same silver bullet for everyone. First, you need to set up the policy, and based on the policy, all other security controls will follow. So that is where, as a CISO, as an advisory guy, you have given them the best option to put forward. Otherwise, you will keep struggling, sometimes implementing with IDS, sometimes implementing IPS. It doesn't work, then you implement something else because you are not going and following a structured approach. So that is very, very important. Okay, so that was your rule number 2. Let's talk about the rule number 3. And the rule number 3 is think before you select. I call it as think before you select. Why to think before you select? Let's see this from this slide perspective. There might be certain questions which are kind of testing you on some action taking. They are prompting you to take certain action. And if you are, that is what happens with most of the technical guys out there. They just see a problem and they start implementing their expertise and they try to dive into this. Don't do that. Before you go and select an option, follow these rules. Number 1, ask yourself one thing. Are you violating separation of duties? Let's say if they say there is a security incident and you have seen the security incident, what should you do? One option may say you should go and start fixing this immediately so that the attacker should not gain control, this and that. But is this as per separation of duties? You might be an auditor, and if you start doing a implementation, you are violating separation of duty. So always be mindful. If you have that concept ready, you will never go for such option in the exam. So that's your number one golden rule. Second one is, are you respecting the process? Let's say they ask you to act, does not mean that you are actually as per the process, you have to go and do it. Might be there is a different team who has to do it, isn't it? Sometimes you have to communicate this maybe to the risk owner, to be maybe the system owner, and then they have to decide. It is their baby, let them decide what to do, and you are just assisting them in the advisory role. As a security guy, you are basically a security custodian. You are a data custodian. You are not the data owner until unless it is your own security data. It might be business data, right? So you have to inform and keep everybody informed about it. You have to collaborate, you have to communicate with the people in solving a proper problem. That is the mindset which is required from a CISSP, right? The last one here, do you have sufficient data to act? Let's say in this scenario, you want to act, right? Everything is very prompting you to do certain thing, but do you really have the data with you? Without collecting data, without doing analysis, let's say without doing risk analysis, can you implement a control? Not at all. It's not a right approach. So always ask these fundamental 4 questions from yourself whenever you are going to answer or select a particular question. And believe me, it will make sure that at least 15 to 20% questions you are answering right. Because just don't have to think like a security guy. You are working as part of a big company, and there are processes, there are roles and responsibilities, there are ethics and so many things. You have to take care of that as well. You want to resolve a problem, but through the proper channel. Just don't directly jump in and start doing it. Now here is a caveat also with this rule. When you talk about incident response, I am talking about especially objective number 7.1.1 and 1.2. That is where this talks about incident handling and this kind of thing. Those kind of questions may not be going with this intent. They might be checking you on the process and the other thing which you are going to perform. So a little bit of caveat, be little mindful when you are going to apply this rule. And believe me, it works. It perfectly works. That is where you can answer a lot of your questions right. Okay, let's see this with an example. So if you can read on the screen, it says you have just discovered a critical security vulnerability in a production system that could potentially lead to a data breach. That means they are telling you about some urgency as well, right? What is the best immediate action to take? Immediate actions to take. Now, if you're a security guy and you are very much into the problem, you will go and answer any one of them, right? You may say apply a quick fix, patch the problem. You are not an IT guy, man. If you go with option number A, are you an IT guy? No, you are doing a security exam. You have to think like a security guy. You are not one who is going to apply the patches. So A goes out. Report the vulnerability to the system owner and recommend a mitigation strategy. That very much might be a way to follow, because first you need to inform the security owner or the system owner. Let them come together with you and get the problem solved. That is the first expectation from you, right? So might be B is the right answer, but let's see others as well, right? Attempt to resolve the vulnerability independently to prevent any disruption to operation. So again, you are trying to be a fixer here, right? You are trying to be an IT guy here. No, not the right way to go again, right? Last option, ignore the vulnerability and focus on other tasks until a more convenient time to address it. Ignorance, I think that's a rule I am going to talk about, is not the way to go. So the simple thing here is, don't just jump into this as the problem asking you. They are prompting you, tempting you, because they say it is the best immediate action you have to take. Don't fall prey to that. Just take a step back, think about, is it as per your roles and responsibility, number 1? Is it as per the process, number 2? Are you the owner to do it, or are you following the process to do it? So always ask those fundamental questions from yourself. Believe me, this will fetch you a lot of good results out of it. Fantastic. Let's talk about rule number 4. There are 10 rules. It is just rule number 4. Rule number 4 says the no ignorance rule. And this is very simple. You can take it as a thumb rule in the exam. If you see the, let's say there is a question and there are certain options. One of the option is giving you a negative tone, ignorance tone. Why you should not do it? Because this is not coming under your roles and responsibilities. As I explained you last time also, right? You have to see your roles and responsibilities also. Let's say something comes which is not part of your role. Are you going to simply ignore it? No, no, no. Never do that in the exam, right? There might be a way to get this fixed. You need to communicate to the right people, let them, take certain steps to do it. You are supposed to let them, you are in an advisory role. So always think that way. So ignorance at any point of time in security is completely unacceptable. You can take it as a thumb rule. If you see any option talking about ignorance or the sense giving a little bit of ignorance thing, never ever go for that option. So that way it will make your work easy to eliminate that particular option. So that was your rule number 4. Let's see this with an example as well. You have just discovered a critical security vulnerability in a production system that could potentially lead to a data breach. What is the best immediate action to do? The same question which we repeated earlier as well. Now in this, if you see this option number D, it says ignore the vulnerability and focus on other tasks until a more convenient time to do it. Guys, in security, you have to never ever ignore any kind of risk. You have to identify, you have to measure, you have to analyze, you have to report, you have to mitigate the risk, but never ignore. Risk ignorance is not the way to go. So that is the golden rule which you should always be aware. Rule number 5, it is called as the human safety rule, and in the exam it's very simple to apply. If let's say the question is asking about, you have a critical data assets or critical things of your company, and let's say there's a fire happening or something like that happening, what you should do first? Always human first, without thinking. It's going to be your thumb rule. Always, don't even think more than that. Human safety is the top priority, and for helping human security, what we do? We integrate your digital security with physical security, and that is why we talk it as a whole. That is why the companies are now moving from the CISO role to something called as a CSO role, right? What is a CSO role? Right? Chief Security Officer. So they are not only responsible for digital security, you may also have a CISO role who is only responsible for digital security, but at the same time you also have somebody who is in charge of the physical security as well, because these two things works very closely and safety is paramount. So mostly because BCDR is highly testable in the CISSP exam, let me tell you straight away, the feedback I keep getting from so many students passing from me, they're always talking about, sir, BCDR was heavily tested. So be sure, and most of those kind of scenario may come from that section itself, who are talking about human safety. They are talking about certain controls like fail open kind of controls, and should you implement fail secure or fail open, and those kind of questions. So always be mindful. Okay, so that's your rule number 5, which is the human safety rule. Let's see this with an example. In the event of a disaster, what is the primary consideration of a security professional responsible for managing the disaster recovery? So if you see all of these options, right, you can see here minimizing downtime and restoring critical system to maintain business continuity. I hope is that the right option? In the event of a disaster, what is the primary consideration of a security professional responsible for managing the disaster recovery function? So you can eliminate option number D for sure. You have to prioritize the safety and well-being of human being above all over everything else. So that's your right answer. The option for this is C. That's the right answer. You don't even have to think twice, right? So that is a golden rule you can always carry with you in the exam. Okay, so option C is the right one. Rule number 6, it talks about the negative tone rule. Now what is this negative tone rule? This negative tone rule means, let's say you get a question, right, and it's talk about some some kind of negativity, cultural negativity, some kind of reporting negativity. We are going to talk with an example for this. If you see in a question hinting on, or in an option, the option is hinting on a blame culture. Let's say if a security incident has happened, you are going to blame to this particular team for that. No, not the right way. Always ignore these kind of questions, right? Bypass communication channel, never do it. Never bypass communication channels in a company, right? Very, very important. Security through obscurity, never trust on security through obscurity. Now if you are not aware what is security through obscurity, let's say in many companies we have Wi-Fi, and in Wi-Fi if you just disable your SSID, Wi-Fi broadcasting SSID, and you think yes, now my SSID is not getting broadcasted, I am safe, no attacker will be able to trace me out, man, you are wrong there. It is something which is security through obscurity, because you are hiding something, you are obscuring something, and you are thinking I am secure. It is just a matter of time when the attacker will get to know, and they are using certain tools to identify your Wi-Fi and break it very easily. So security through obscurity, never follow. That is also one part of the entire rule. Last and very, very important, lack of action due to lack of accountability. If an option say you in the exam, let's say there is a problem, they are asking you to resolve, and the option is saying you should not worry about it because this is not your roles and responsibility, or this is not your accountability, it is not as part of your JD, right? So as I told you, in security, ignorance is not the way. Even if you are not accountable for something, but if something has come to your notice, if the question is putting you where you are being part of a problem, then you have to take the accountability to at least communicate with the other people and let them know, okay, what is the problem here, right, and how to resolve it and those kind of stuff. So that is a golden rule which you should follow all. I hope this helps. If this doesn't help, let's go and practice this question. This will give you a clear idea of the same. It says, what is the most effective approach to handle a security incident within an organization? If you can see closely, option number A and option number D, both of them are little, you can see that, right? They're little, what you can say, giving you a negative tone. Blaming individual for the incident, not at all the right way. Blame culture is never good for security. Immediately terminating the employees responsible for the incident to set an example of others. Not at all. Just an example for others, just for that sake, if you are doing something is not right. And obviously, even if that is right, terminating a guy is not your responsibility as part of being a security guy. It is HR responsibility, it is legal responsibility. Let them communicate them, let them follow their process to terminate this guy, right? So always be mindful of these kind of questions, very, very important. Okay. Excuse me. Rule number 7, it talks about the balanced security rule. Now what is this balanced security rule? Simple. If let's say there is a management question, and there from the tone itself you have to identify it's a management question or it's a technical question, right? That's something you have to identify. Once you do that, you should not be completely security biased, you should also not be business biased. Take a decision which is good for security as well as with business. So you have to follow a very, very balanced approach as part of certain options. Let's see this from this question perspective. In the context of information security governance, which of the following factor is most crucial for ensuring effective alignment between business objective and security goal? And it says, number one, the CEO personal preference regarding security measures. You are not here from a personal preference perspective, right? You have to take risk into consideration, you have to assess the risk, and then only you should be going and mitigating the risk, because security comes at a cost. And just because you are a security guy and just making your eyes blind and you are going to implement security, it's going to be over expense for the company. Not the right way to. Option number C also you should notice, it says the IT department budget constraint and resource limitation. Yes, one of the factor, critical factor when you are going for the budget and all, but this should not hinder you advising them the best control in there at that particular time. And then you have to do a cost benefit analysis, right, for doing that. So I think you can safely ignore C also here, right? If you see the option number B, that is the most suitable, right? You have to always take a risk based approach to identify something and then mitigate it at the same time. So you need to measure the risk and compare it with your risk appetite, and based on that you should able to make a decision either to mitigate or to transfer or whatever like risk response you want to do. So that is why B is the right answer for this, right? The last thing as well, the security team preference also may not be right. It is just talking about their preference. Preference is not the way to go. You have to critically analyze the risk and then take action. So that is why this rule helps you in this. Okay, I hope we have covered a lot of stuff. Let's go and talk about rule number 8. The rule number 8 says the risk prioritization rule. Now what does this mean? Simple as that. In cybersecurity, even cybersecurity itself is part of the risk management. You are part of a big machinery, and in that cybersecurity is just a program. Just like they want to curb the risk for their financial thing, their market related risk and all, that is how you are also mitigating risk for IT, isn't it? That's the entire focus for you and me being hired by the companies, right? End of the day. So cybersecurity is a risk management activity, and when we are going risk, we have to quantify risk and then we have to prioritize, because companies never have sufficient money to spend on security. Budget is always a constraint. So that is where you should always be thinking about that security is not implemented flat. It is always implemented based on priority, the cost of the asset, the value of the asset to the company. And value can also be driven not only from cost, from the impact if the asset is not available, the data it is holding, and the legal regulations and all, or the contractual regulation, all of this, all those kind of factors may decide a asset value. And based on asset value, you have to always implement security. More critical the asset, the more security you are going to implement, the more controls and expense you are going to do on the. That should always be your approach. That is why this is called as the risk prioritization. Rule number 9 is the ethical sense rule. Right? Now this might look to you, what is that? The ethical sense rule. Let me explain. Okay. If a question is asking you to take an action, right, you should not be, or you should never be rather, going outside the scope of the ISC 2 code of ethics. You know, objective number 1.1 in the entire CISSP talks about ethics, right? It talks about personal ethics, it talks about organization ethics, and more importantly, it also speaks about ISC 2 code of ethics. You should never be going outside this. Rule number 1, you have to do everything as per the society, in the favor of the society, good of the society all the time. Very, very important. Second thing, that is more on your professional behavior. You have to be honest, justly, and honorable to others and all of those kind of stuff. Number 3rd rule, you have to give your best services to the principal. And the last one is grow and keep the profession also growing. You have to work in the interest of the profession, right? And also work on your own development as well. So these are the 4 ethics you should never be, whenever you are going to answer, because they may not directly test you onto those objectives. They may give you a scenario and indirectly they might be testing. Many times candidate come back to me and say, sir, nothing came from objective number 1.1. It doesn't happen that way. They might have tested you in some way or the other, but they 100% will test you on that, because that is the security profession, the first thing, the main fundamental thing which you should be tested upon. So you will definitely be tested, but with a scenario. So be aware with that. You have to be at all time be within the scope of or you can say the boundary of ISC 2 code of ethics. Never go outside. So that's a very, very critical learning, right? That is why I call this the ethical sense rule. As per the option, which one is more aligned with ISC 2 code of ethics? So that is very, very important. Guys, rule number 10. It talks about the security culture rule. Now, let's say you get a question in the exam, and it talks about technical controls, all of it. But finally, you see that the question is basic. The root cause of a problem statement is because of the security culture of the people. The best control for security culture is always the security awareness. You don't need to think twice. Always remember, when it comes to the culture, right? But sometimes we also implement a technical control before the culture. If the technical control is missing, and then you are expecting that your security culture, security awareness will resolve all the things for you, it will become a Superman for you. It doesn't happen that way. But yeah, if the question is asking you related to the base problem is the security culture, you can confidently go and ask for me, you can quote me, right? You have to go with security awareness as the option, because that's the best control. Okay, so that was our rule number. Fantastic, guys. These were the 10 golden rules for you. I hope I am in time finishing this thing. I will just take 2 minutes of your more just to conclude things for you and give you further direction. Right? Approach exam as an advisor. This is the first thing. If you remember, I told you, don't get into the problem. Don't be a implementer. Come out of it. Come out of it. And things like an advisor sitting at a distance, and then go with the options. Always it will help you to get the best out of you. Number second, ability to apply balanced security. Always keep that at the back of your mind. I have to go with the option which is balanced between security and business. But if the question is completely a security question, they are asking about a technical control, they are asking about a particular security incident and all, then you have to go with security. But if you see a balance, there might be some question hanging between business and security. Definitely, that's the way to go. The next thing is simulate as a cybersecurity professional in an enterprise environment. Just don't go to the exam hall thinking I am going to get a security exam. I have to be highly technical in nature. Not required. CISSP is not highly technical in nature. Let me tell you very straight away. They are testing your approach, they are testing your aptitude, and that is where you have to put yourself within a company environment and respect all those processes, roles and responsibilities and things like that. So that is a critical factor into your answer making, right? Understand and respect the processes. Always don't breach your processes. Always have good roles and responsibility defined and respect those roles and responsibility. Always think about separation of duties, and always have a very good communication channel. Communication is the key. There might be some question which may come on communication. How well you need to communicate. Let's say they give you a question saying, as a security guy, how you are going to communicate security to, let's say, a higher up. How you are going to communicate to somebody who is from business. They don't understand security. So that is where you have to give some live examples and things like it, so that you are able to make people understand all of it. So that is the approach you should have. And then the risk, right risk oriented approach. Always go risk oriented. Always at the back of every question, think about risk. So that is also very, very. Okay guys, I think this was the most critical part, and if you want that I should be your mentor, because nobody else trains you 60 hours of live exam training, that's going to be a game changer for you, for your CISSP success. If you feel you need a mentor, somebody who can mentor you end to end, I am here to help you guys. You can contact on the given numbers, and if you enroll today itself, entire Udemy set, there is a special set which I have for you. That entire thing is going to be given you as a, you can say, because we are starting with a new batch. from 17th of July, and that is where I think almost enrollments are almost 10-12 enrollments are there, and if you want to join us, feel free. It can be make or break for your CISSP. So I hope, guys, I might have been able to deliver you value. That was my entire intent of coming into this session. It doesn't matter you are taking training from Cybernous or not taking training from Cybernous, immaterial. Your success matters, because CISSP journey is a very different journey, and we want you to be successful. You can reach me out for any help and all, and I'm most happy to help. Thank you very much for joining in and spending time with me, and thanks to the entire team for helping me get this webinar done, guys. And do also let me know what topics you need from me in the time to come.